Okay, what we'd like to do now is give you a realistic view of a recovery timeline from a couple's perspective. Now, I have to say, with disclaimers, people do not fit into boxes. No one will fit this perfectly because relationships and individuals vary greatly. But there are some really important principles that we can share as we discuss this timeline. And we think it's important that you have an understanding of the process of adultery recovery. So
there is an ending, and that's what we want you to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe.
We're trying to give hope here, okay? Can I throw in my disclaimer right off the bat here? This is something I've never really liked because I think people start looking at times, and then we look at these timelines and they say, oh, well, you guys know, you've seen so many couples go through this. Well, at 1 month, we should be doing ABC. Well, sometimes ABC doesn't happen until month 4 or 6 or year 2, and we don't want to make this a daunting experience, but we also don't want to have you going around screaming that, oh, we're never going to make it through this because look, we're not even at phase 1 yet.
Yeah.
Please, this is all about phases. It's not about the timeline. It's what you do in the time that you are working on this.
It's not super specific or super exact.
Yeah, I keep I keep going back to Mona's quote of Oswald Chambers. We're trying to take our principle here and make it, or take our experience and make it into a principle. Let God be as completely as unique with you guys as a couple as He was with all of us. So yeah. So, but now this, like we said, though, this is about hope, and we're just trying to give you some things to see that, well, we're not crazy. That should be happening.
There is some value.
Yeah, amen. There's a lot of value here, but don't get stuck on the times. Okay, go ahead.
So we're looking at it in 4 phases. We have given you an estimated time, and perhaps that should be removed. But look at it as phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. And phase 1 and 2 kind of ride side by side and at the parallel tracks, if you will. It is the beginning of the process, both 1 and 2. And it begins with revelation. Now, we need to stop here and talk a little bit about serial revelation, because Mike and Joe have already shared with you that Mike lied for a few days before he confessed everything. We've talked to many people. It's not been a few days. It's been a few months or something like that. So if and when there is new information delivered, if and when there is a new lie discovered, you are going to come right back to phase 1.
Right.
Every single time.
Yeah.
So phase 1 is revelation, and what we need to understand is that it's overwhelming and temporary. It's the shock, the trauma that we've talked about, the comparable to a death. And your betrayed spouse has difficulty thinking. Now, this is not all,
all-encompassing?
Inclusive.
There you go.
This is not all-inclusive. We're just going to talk about the 4 most common reactions that we have seen. Please note that many people go in and out of all of this at the same time.
Right.
And just for information, we did pass this timeline under some experts for their review just to make sure we weren't totally off the mark. So
and they said it was fine just to get us out of their office. No, I'm sorry.
They did not. So one of the common first responses is anger. And if you've watched many videos, then you know that that's where Joe was. You tell everyone, you're screaming from the rooftops. You can demonize the unfaithful person, even to your kids. And this is a flight or fight response. It's a cry for help. It's too much. I can't. I won't. And we had a therapist one time that was there as a
participant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a therapist one time as a participant, and she said, what we're describing is called primal. And that so resonated with me. It is a primal reaction. Another common one is fear, where you're overwhelmed by fear. And I spent a few months here myself where you're hiding, you withdraw from your activity, you're smiling at church, but maybe 1 or 2 people know, but they're sworn to secrecy. And you're terrified. You are terrified that you can't heal. You feel hopeless. The shame is just overwhelming, and nobody knows, and you feel all alone because why? You are all alone.
Yeah.
Another one is pain. This is where I started my journey. The walking wounded, I call us. We're dazed and confused, if you will. We're not functioning very well. We might enlist a few for support.
I was just going to say, this is the time when you were in the bedroom in the fetal position and couldn't even get out of bed, so it was a real tough time for you.
The depression often comes in here, a very common part and a common response to something this horrific. If we had an office and we had a sign, the sign on the door would say, "I just want my life back," because that's what some of us feel. I just want my life back. You're barely functioning and nothing seems to help at all.
Yeah, but really, in reality, you don't want your life.
No, because that life got you to where you are.
That's right.
That's right.
That's
at
right.
that point in time. So
God's
you don't
got
want
you on
that.
a path. You go down that path. He's going to work with you.
But in the beginning phases of this, you have to grieve the fact that it feels like your life's been
No,
lost.
I get that.
And that's understanding. Now here is a fourth one, and this is the United Front. They are both willing to heal and get help. They are having great talks unlike they've ever had before. They're sharing their hearts, and they look really good. But they're not through processing. That same therapist says this is called hysterical bonding. And so,
truthfully, they've never started processing.
Yeah, right. And a lot of therapists, you run this under their nose. They go, well, we don't see a lot of couples like that.
They don't come to
They don't come to. They
don't need them.
They're doing great.
And but the emotions will eventually begin to surface, and they'll begin to understand the job they've taken on. Now, the thing that's really important to understand about this is, and I think I said this earlier, but you're going to vacillate between these responses. Nobody's going to fit this perfectly. But here's some things that can happen with that revelation. You could draw together or polarize. The unfaithful may even leave for the partner. The spouse may ask for a separation. Or both may feel like they understand the issues. But no matter what does or doesn't happen in these early stages of revelation, we need to remember that reconciliation is still possible.
Absolutely.
Things to understand: common behaviors, damage control. I'll do anything. Let me help you.
Right.
To just questioning 24/7, or not asking anything. Sexual activity can be intense to "we'll never touch again." And again, what's important is this is temporary.
Right.
This is temporary.
Very temporary.
So, in terms of the sexual activity, if you had sexual issues before the adultery, well, you're probably going to encounter those sexual issues after the adultery, and you can work on that.
Well, any issue you had before the adultery
Any issue.
is going to have to be addressed.
So we just encourage you, don't give your sexual issues any more prominence than any other issue that you're going to deal with. And just remember that this is temporary and healing is always a possibility. Now, one of the things that really, really helped me, I can remember the four of us were in a meeting at Mike's office, and we were able to put this on a whiteboard where we understood it. And that is that there are two areas of healing in adultery recovery. So let's talk about those two areas, because I think it can help in your journey on this convoluted road. The two areas are the infidelity itself and the marriage. And recognizing these as two separate issues can really help you through the complexity of the process. So let's talk about the infidelity. The infidelity is 100% on the unfaithful person. They made a unilateral choice, 100% theirs. There was no reason good enough. I don't care if I was the worst wife. I mean, I do care. But even if I was the worst wife in the world, there were other options Gary could have taken advantage of to deal with that, to find help for us besides an affair. So there is no reason good enough. But before I, as a betrayed spouse, can even begin to deal with those marriage issues that we said were also included, I have to deal with the infidelity first.
Even if the issue is communication,
Right.
which seems like you cannot even start this unless you have communication kind of squared away. But the infidelity has got to come first.
It has to come first.
The infidel has to take the onus.
That's
Yep,
right.
amen.
That's right. We have to address the betrayal, the deception, the secrets, and that breaching
Right.
of trust. We have to address it, the two of us together. Because the foundation of our relationship has been shattered. And until a sense of that relationship is reestablished, and I wish I could give you 1, 2, 3, 4 done, I can't. But until a sense of that relationship is reestablished for both of you, there is no foundation on which to rebuild
right.
the marriage.
That's right.
And this is huge because so many betrayed spouses are told to move forward. Your husband or wife has confessed. They have repented. Now let's focus on what went wrong with the marriage. And trying to work on the marriage before you've addressed the infidelity is like fixing a house
That's right.
without fixing the foundation. It may look good for a while, but it is not going to withstand the storms that come. The second issue is the marriage. All marriages have issues, and we are equally responsible for those. But God has your attention now. And I used to say 50-50, but I was corrected. It's 100% responsible for the issues in your marriage. And this one really bugged me, but people would say, oh, this is an awesome opportunity. And I wanted to throw up. But in fact, of truth, it is an awesome opportunity to explore the issues in your marriage. Some will be incompatible with a healthy marriage and need to be addressed immediately, like the adultery. Gary felt unloved and unwanted, and I'm simplifying, but that's where it came down to share. And that was simply unacceptable in a healthy marriage, that any one person in a healthy marriage would feel unloved and unwanted. So that needed to be addressed from a marriage perspective. It was not an excuse for the infidelity, but it was a marriage issue that needed to be addressed. Now, some issues may be no big deal, and they can be discussed and let go. Gary and I will never agree on everything. Neither will you and your spouse, and that's okay. We're two different people. But we can respect another's opinion, even if it differs from ours. Some of the issues we faced were much more about our own selfish desires or unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
And this can be those little resentments that add up over the years of a marriage, toothpaste squeezing, toilet seat position, and you know what yours is. The point is, if you are unwilling to give on anything, if everything is a hill to die on, then everything is a minefield to be avoided by your spouse. Now is a time that can be used by both of you to benefit your marriage. These issues will need to be discussed. And you know what? Even after the healing, you're going to have issues. Mike and Joe still have issues in their marriage. Gary and I still have issues in our marriage. But here's the difference.
What?
Here's the difference. When and how we deal with those issues is much different now.
Oh, yeah.
And what's really important and what to allow for personal preference is a much greater, we have a much greater view, we have a much wider viewpoint than we did before.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's really important that both of you understand, yes, part of our healing will be about the marriage, but the infidelity has to be dealt with first, and then we can move into the marriage
So you fix the
issues.
foundation, and then you can worry about retiling the kitchen.
That's right. That's right. So again, I wish it was really easy and clear, and we could say, well, here's what divides this from that, because some of this stuff does happen simultaneously. But I would just challenge you, if you're in the beginning stages of adultery recovery and you're not making much progress, you're butting heads more than anything else, I think it might be time for the unfaithful person to really sit down and ask their betrayed spouse, do you feel like we've dealt with the infidelity? Do you feel like you know what happened? Like, I'm being honest. And that might lend some information
Credibility.
to help you.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. You have any more questions? Because I'm here to answer.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that feels impossible, but it goes so
Well,
such
I
a long
can tell
way.
you, me in the early stages, me thinking I was going to come home and say, now, do you have any more questions? I would just be more than happy to have, it's like, you come home from work and that's what it is. It's just, from getting home from work till, you pass out at 1 or 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
It's all questions.
You were born at night, but not last night.
Yeah. So, I know it sounds like it's kind of like, wow, but that's so important. It's a watershed moment. When you come home and you are open, you're owning this, and you're just saying, if there's anything you need, do we need to talk? You have anything about that, they will.
How was your day?
Yeah. It's-
Mona, are you going to address that there are some exceptions to what must come first, even before the infidelity?
Yeah, thank you. There are some exceptions, and one and B, if there is physical abuse in the relationship and if there are addiction issues. Some of those things need to be dealt with before you can even address the infidelity.
Right.
So again, a good reason to consult professional Christian counseling to see if there's anything glaring that has to be dealt with before you can even start on the adultery. Now, there's one other important thing that I want people to understand before you move into phase 2. And this is what divides phase 1 and phase 2. But phase 2 happens when both husband and wife are working together, when revelation is complete, and then it begins. So if there are still secrets, if there are still lies out there, you haven't moved into phase 2 yet. If you're not working together because you haven't even talked, because you separated and all you're talking about is kids and who gets them when, where, and why, if it's been 6 months or a year, you're still not in phase 2 because you haven't started working together. So essential that all the truth has been spoken, the revelation is complete, and you are working together. That's when phase 2 begins.
And what has been done in phase 1, let's say, like truth has been come out, you don't lose what you've gained. Yes, thank you.
Right.
But the beginning of healing doesn't really start till you're both on the same page.
Yeah, and so if unfortunately there was more deception or a secret and that's revealed, and we're talking about serial revelation here, then you'll go back to phase 1. But thank you for pointing that out, Joe. Anything healthy that you gained in these first times,
tools and
Yes.
communication.
you'll keep
Right.
those, but
Yep.
you will have to start over at the beginning.
That's right.
Sure.
Yeah. So then we move into phase 3. And phase 3 is what we call the weariness phase. Phase 3 is hard work, and it's difficult to see the progress. It really is, because you are weary. It's a roller coaster ride versus real life. You're aware now of the magnitude of the injury. It wasn't just fixed by a few conversations or a few pieces of jewelry or a few talks and cries. You're exhausted.
And apathy can set in here, where it's like you don't even care anymore.
Yeah, that's very true. You get very tired.
And you may appear stable, but you may even be functioning. But one of the best examples we've heard on this one is a broken leg analogy. If you break your leg, you go to the doctor and he figures out you've gotten a broken leg, then they put a cast on your leg. Well, a cast is
How is it, Joe?
Cumbersome, heavy, hot, itchy.
a cast is cumbersome, heavy, hot. It limits your mobility. It's a pain in the neck.
Or wherever the cast may be.
Or wherever the cast may be. But you put that cast on so that you can be normal later. And that's some of the things that you're going to do in adultery recovery, particularly in these second and third phases. You're going to do some things that are awkward, cumbersome, uncomfortable, not anything you're going to continue forever, but you do that so the healing can occur.
Right.
And then as the healing occurs, like in the case of the broken leg, you'll take the cast off. And it's going to take a long time before you get full function back. I had a cast for 2 whole weeks one time, and they took it off, and I couldn't, it was my ankle. I couldn't even bend my ankle. I said, oh my gosh, what's wrong with my foot? And they said, well, about double the time you were in the cast is how long until you get full function back. It took a long time. It took a month to get my function back in just bending and moving my leg.
I felt really bad because I thought she was just dogging it from doing the chores and taking care of the kids.
Anyway, the point is you're going to do some things that are uncomfortable. You're going to make some decisions and choices that you would rather not have to make.
And you may feel like quitting.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And Gary and I, the last marathon, remember that we
Yeah,
ran,
yeah.
Gary, at 17 miles. Both of us felt like quitting.
Yeah, I know.
And then we got that second win.
That's second
And
win.
we
I thought you
finished
said once a liar, not always a liar.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
race, Gary. We did.
Okay, unfortunately, in phase 3, this is also where our support may begin to fade. The supporters get weary too. So all those people, if you were fortunate enough to have good support, they are weary too. They're weary of seeing you hurt. So you may start getting some mixed messages. One may say, would you just get over it and move on? And the other may say, oh, maybe you really can't do it. You should just get out of the marriage.
Right.
This is also where counseling may end or decrease. Not all of us can afford frequent counseling for the rest of our lives, and they get us to a point where we're stabilized, and the work is really on us. So your support feels like it's fading. And then, like you mentioned, Mike, the temptation is to quit.
Yeah.
The temptation is to quit. Slide back into the old normal. Just lose hope. It's never going to happen.
Right.
And we just want to make you aware that that's a common temptation. But this path is worth walking all the way through.
You know, and I think a lot of people there's also a temptation here, and I think you're going to get to this, but it's like when it starts to feel normal again. You know, and I know you're going to go into where that can start freaking you out. But it's also, too, if you got two people that really are just tired of fighting it, and I've seen this a lot with two conflict avoiders, you know, and they just say, you know, this is like, it's like they almost say, like, wow, this is good enough, you know, and this is normal, and this is good, so let's just quit working, because working hurts too much. It's too hard to do. And that's where we would say, nah, you just keep pushing through this, because there's a promised land beyond this, you know. Don't just settle for second best. So
Or if you don't keep working, you want to do this again and start from phase 1?
Yeah.
That's what'll happen.
Yeah. It's possible.
Yeah.
So I guess our main message to you about this phase 3 temptation to quit is simply don't. Don't quit.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone, contact somebody who can support and encourage you. Another thing that's happening now is the rebuilding trust. And that transparent honesty for both of you is absolutely essential. Consistency. It's a very slow process. In fact, a lot of therapists say that trust will be the last thing rebuilt. So, so many times the couples want that to be one of the first things. And we have a video on the website about rebuilding trust. So here are some things that can help during this weariness phase. One of them is evaluating frequency, intensity, and duration. We encourage couples to ask themselves 3 questions when they fear they're not making progress. Are the bad times, the worst times decreasing in frequency? If so, that's progress. Maybe when you started, it was 15 times a day, and now you're down to 2 times a day. That's progress. Are the bad times, the worst times decreasing in duration? Well, it used to last for 4 hours minimum, and now we're down to 1 hour. That's progress.
Yep.
And the last question is, are the bad times, the worst times, decreasing in intensity? Perhaps at the beginning on a chart of 1 to 10, it was 25, and today it's a 9.5. That's progress. And slow progress is still progress.
But it still sometimes just doesn't feel
It
like
doesn't feel like it. So sometimes when I've run these, when I've been talking to somebody who's really concerned they're not making progress and they're really weary, I've done these 3 questions and they'd say, you know, I guess we are a little better than we were.
Yep. And that's that. Go ahead, Mike.
Like, I think there's a human tendency to focus on how far we
Haven't
to
come-
go
yeah.
to the finish line
Yeah.
when we probably need to do more celebrating of how far we've come.
Yeah.
And I know that that goes against the human tendency to look at it with oh my gosh, look how far we have to go.
Yeah.
Look
Right.
how far you've come.
Look how far you've come.
And then, yeah, that's really true. But I think one of the problems is with this, we don't get to see the finish line.
No, I know.
You know, because we don't know how far it is off. So that's what can
Right.
seem so daunting about
That's
is you'll hear people say years and years. What do you mean? And
Yeah.
and that can sound so daunting, and it like drives you crazy at this point because you don't know where the finish line is. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, but I think that's why it is so important if you have people that have been through this.
That's exactly the point I was going to make.
And they can say,
Yeah.
oh, no. I know exactly
Where
how
you
you
are.
feel.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
why the best people to help people that have addictions, are people that have gone through
That's
that.
right.
And they'll come and say, the person who's going through this will say, well, you don't know how I feel. Yeah, I do.
yes, I do.
Yes, I do. And that's
Yeah.
why the hope is up there, right, Gary?
Yeah, that's
Isn't
right.
that why we put
That's
that up
right.
there?
That's
That's
open healing.
exactly right.
And just to
Right.
back to that point, though, it may not feel like it
Yeah.
because they're so weary.
Oh, I
They've been
know,
doing
I
this for
know.
so long, and they're thinking, "Oh my goodness, we're never going to get through this." And that frequency, intensity, duration, that was really key for us.
It was,
because we were so weary at that point, and I'm thinking right around 10 months or so we were into it, and we were just so weary from this, and we were just like ready to quit. And then when you look at it from that frequency, intensity, and duration, how often is it happening? How bad is it? What is it? And you look back and you go, well, yeah, we are making,
We're making a little.
And the
making
scariest part is the intensity is the last thing
Yeah,
to go.
yeah.
Right, thank you. That's where I was going. They need to be aware that the intensity will
Right.
be the last one to diminish. Sometimes we can see progress in frequency and duration,
Right.
and the intensity can still scare us.
Yeah.
So, intensity, duration, and frequency. The point is, overall, are they decreasing? If you can honestly say they are not, then it may be time to do something different because what you're doing is not working. That doesn't mean it's a failure. That doesn't mean you can't heal. It just means we need to find another tool. We don't have the right tool for us right now. And that can be discussed with your counselor. If they are decreasing, then maybe you just need a break. And breaks are okay. This is a long journey, a marathon. So give yourself and each other a little bit of grace. And when I say a break, it needs to be clearly established it's a break.
Yeah.
Go take some time, take a day, whatever, when it's agreed upon, and have fun. It's okay to enjoy your children. It's okay to laugh, but come back and keep working. It's kind of interesting. I have a letter waiting for me right now from a couple that we've been talking with, and they just took a little break. And they had a really good time. So you know what happened?
Yeah.
They got
came home.
Yeah, they don't,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
And now they're almost worried about having had a good time.
Yeah.
So we'll be chatting about that. It's just like Mike said, we can't stress enough the value of someone who can help you along this journey.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So now here's another thing that really helped Gary and I. And this is the focus being on us, us. So let's talk about the entity, us. A man and a woman get married, the two become one, and they have unity of purpose, the family, the relationship, the marriage. It's not unity of persons. They're still two whole people. And we'll be individuals in heaven. God says there's no marriage in heaven. Go ahead, Gare.
No. At an intensive, maybe at this point, I might every now and then would have said, "No marriage, no marriage in heaven." Well, I guess that's what makes it heaven. It wasn't that
Yeah,
funny. Sorry.
not appropriate
funny,
for the
did it?
video.
Telling
Yeah.
you,
It
All the
always
guys
brings
laughed. All the
laughter.
guys laughed.
Yeah, it always brings laughter.
spit on you.
But, I've always wondered about that. The two become one.
Yeah.
And what's the one? Because we're still individuals. Well, the one is us. And it's an entity that needs to be nourished or it will die. Let me give you an example. You make us a factor in your decision making. And so I like to walk for exercise. And there was a time when I wanted to start walking at night with a partner.
A friend. Yeah, not a partner.
There was a time when my walking girlfriend and I wanted to start walking at night. And Gary was very uncomfortable with that. He didn't want me to walk at night, even with another person, because he thought it was too dangerous. Now, I thought it was fine with another person and my big dog, but he didn't. So we could have sat there and argued about that. But instead, we looked at Gary's opinion, my opinion, and then we looked at what's going to feed us. And I figured out that it wasn't that big of a deal. See, for some reason, it could be dark at 6 a.m., and that was okay with him. But if it was at 7 p.m., it was...
Yeah, I'm still in bed at 6 a.m.
Yeah. So I chose, with my friend, to walk different hours because of us. Not because I had to, and not because I can't walk. It's because it was better for us. I was respecting his opinion. And there's lots of ways that we make decisions like that. Gary hates to go shopping. But he realized, as we had young children growing up, that if they were going to get Christmas and birthday presents, he, as their father, might want to participate in that little venture.
Yeah.
And so he would go. He
To
didn't know
work
it at the
and
time.
make the money. No, I'm sorry. And then you go buy them. No,
So there are times when Gary chooses to go shopping for us. Not because he wants to go, and not because I'm making him, but it feeds us.
Yep.
And he'll come back and say, I'll do it for us.
Yes,
That's right.
absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
right. So
That's not meant to be like a chalkboard in the sky putting ticks up there. It really is something that we have incorporated in our lives to say that I'm hearing you, I'm listening to you, I care about you, and this is worth it to feed us. Because I'll tell you one thing, when you start feeding us and making those decisions like that, it feeds her, it feeds me, and it's just something that we both really benefit from, because it's just a good thing.
And the reality is, if I make my decisions based on how I feel about Gary at that moment, one day I might want to just be rubbing his back, and the next day I want to be kicking him in the gut. You know, that's going to fluctuate with how I'm feeling at the moment.
Mona, tell us how you really feel.
I didn't mean that. Okay. Let me rephrase that.
I can honestly say that she's never kicked me in the gut.
We encourage you to make us a factor in your decisions. The benefit in choosing us is that you feel good about yourself. Mm-hmm. And I like me when I'm nice, you know? And in fact, I encourage you to give us more weight than yourself or your spouse. And we have just found that when either one of us chooses us, things go better. Mm-hmm. So when I'm considering what a decision, you know, am I going to do A or B? I think about what I want. I get Gary's input. And then I consider, what about us as a couple, as that unit? Will it feed us? And sometimes the answer is pretty clearly, yes, it will. Mm-hmm. And that helps us make decisions. Yes, we found it to be truly a great tool for our marriage.
Very, very beneficial. We incorporated that, and that's been a real good gold nugget for us.
It has. Yeah. It has, yeah. So that's phase 3. And you're still weary, you're still struggling, but you're still healing. You're still working through it. And phase 4 is kind of an elusive phase, if you will. You're continuing to work, but the ups and downs are less, and normalcy has kind of returned to your relationship. You do want some of that, but of course figuring out what you don't want to let back in, and there's some of that decision making to be done. And about this time you have triggers. And triggers are simply something that happen in an instant. It can be in a death, it's called anniversary reaction. You know, the date of revelation. Well, the first year people are going to remember that. Your first birthday after revelation. Gee, I remember where my unfaithful spouse was on my last birthday. You're going to have that. And they are just calendar dates or seasonal dates or event dates.
Right.
But responding to that is appropriate. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not like you don't remember that he was with his girlfriend on your birthday last year. I mean, that's not something you're going to forget. No. They're involuntary thoughts, but you can evaluate them and then reject them when they come,
Right.
because the trigger is not it happening again. And I think a lot of the things we've learned as we've walked through these phases, healing together, can be put into practice here in how to react and how to help one another through those triggers. You're going to be redefining the marriage. And this is where, and this was a big one for me, normal scared the dickens out of me.
Joe would tell me, well, I'm a little frightened here because it seems like we're going back to the way we were before. Not that there were females or horrible things.
Yeah.
It's just that
There was no evidence of you.
Well, and she, because at the first couple of phases, I was willing to go across, over Niagara Falls in a barrel.
Yeah.
And when it started to get normal, she'd say, "Well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You're starting to be just a little bit like you were before." Even though there was nothing happening, it was frightening to you, right?
It was attitude, I think.
It was
Yeah,
attitude.
yes.
Well, okay. That's what I said. I just thought I still had a good attitude, but maybe not. But I appreciated her telling me that.
But you can't be, remember that cast
Right.
example?
Yeah.
You don't stay in a cast forever. And we just want to make you aware that when that cast starts coming off and you go back to normal behaviors that are even healthy,
That's right.
it can be very frightening, because normal is where I was when Revelation happened.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and that rebuilding trust is still pretty fragile at this point. And you're trying to agree on new rules. There are things that you need to change about your marriage, about yourself, and discussing those and figuring it out. And how does that look in reality in our life? Those are long conversations.
And these are when your hedges are going to start coming into place.
That's exactly right.
Because you'll start, because you've had all this time to peel the onion and kind of figure out what left you vulnerable in the first place. So you're now hopefully starting to put or at least the hedges are starting to come into focus, where
Right.
you know your weaker areas where you were vulnerable. And as you start to do that, this is a time that you're going to start be working on those hedges together. And it's an us thing. The hedges things are definitely an us thing. Now, my hedges are not for Mona to enforce. Okay, that's important, and that's an important thing to say. Is this is my hedge, so it's not Mona going, you'll do that. It's like, this is for me. And so this is for me. So yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
And you might want to have to readjust a hitch
That's
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
based on what you are feeling.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a good time to develop together the new habits. I hope you listen to Hedges and hear some of Mike and Joe's stories about some of the things they started doing together, and not
And
everything.
chose not
and
to do
chose
together.
not everything worked out,
Yeah.
but they've got some great stories now.
really.
Yeah,
you definitely have to go check out their one on their camping when they that's
Some of the stories almost destroyed us.
Yeah. That was the bear and the pit bull, I
That's
think.
right. Yeah.
And we want to, in this phase 4, we want to encourage you to continue with your resources and support. And this may well be where you start utilizing some of that marriage enrichment material.
Right.
Maybe it's not so adultery focused, but maybe we are going to learn how to communicate better. We are going to learn more about trust and respect. And there are multiple things out there to help, and you can utilize that. The things that we want you to understand in these final phases is that responding doesn't mean you didn't heal. It just means you responded, and that's okay.
Now, what exactly do you mean by responding?
Well, you can have an emotional response to
Okay.
something, and it doesn't eliminate
Right.
all
so
these
if you
months of
emotionally
hard
flood,
work.
or if something triggers you, or whatever like that,
Right.
then that doesn't mean that you haven't healed.
That's exactly
Yeah,
right.
that's
So,
right.
It's not all over because somebody reacted emotionally to something, or said something they shouldn't have said, or did something they shouldn't have done.
And that's for the time when apologies are important.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. We'll all have that opportunity. It's also important to realize that it is okay to enjoy one another. As a person, as a husband, as a wife, not only is it okay, but if you don't start enjoying one another, you're not going to have much of a healthy marriage. So make some efforts. There's some great tools out there to help you build that kind of relationship. And it's a good thing to reevaluate once in a while. One of the things I'll just share with you, Gary and I, even 20 years later, one of the things that we tend to do now is one of the signals for us is if we start feeling distant from one another. Now, you have to understand, Gary and I live together, we work together, we do ministry together, we're together 24/7.
24/7.
So, excuse me, we're together 24/7. So you might say, how can you feel distant? Well, you can. and it's just a little bit of separation in there. Well, before we might have just ignored that for a whole lot longer. Now we don't. Now we don't. One of us will say, hey, how are we doing?
Yeah.
I'm feeling distant. And very often that'll be followed by going somewhere or taking a date or
Yeah. Mona wanting to go to Hawaii again or whatever.
Ulterior motive galore here. Oh my gosh.
You know what I need? I really need to say this. Mona's a travel
Fiend.
Yeah, really,
okay, let me rephrase that.
No. Because I think this should all be left in. I think this is really good because that's what you'd like to do, but we don't do that. It's like it's always followed by something that we can put into place, like
to reconnect.
You're right,
Yeah.
and it doesn't mean we're going to Hawaii.
No, you're right.
It would mean that we need to go sit down on the couch and just have a Diet Coke and and
play a game
and talk about this.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we would have never ever
done before.
Yeah.
We would. One of us would have gotten really offended. We would have ended up in a fight.
Yeah.
We would have said, "Well, what's wrong with you?" And now we both listen a little better and we talk about it. So it's okay. So here's the big question, right? When is it over? When is the healing complete? And what we would tell you is it's over when both of you say it's over.
Yeah.
Right.
Both.
So if one of you says it's over and the other one says, I'm not quite done yet, guess what? It's not over.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Just enjoy the progress because healing is possible and it's worth everything it costs.
Yeah, and one of the things too that when we say when it's both is over, one of the things that we found is pretty doggone universal, and that is it's over when you both say it's over, but it's most always in hindsight.
In hindsight.
Sure. Right.
It's
Right.
when you look back and you go, oh, wow. We really have done a lot better. So yeah, maybe it is over, and then you don't get freaked out if something comes up and triggers, a month later. It's not,
right.
You're healed, you're moving forward,
okay.
you have hope. And then Mike hit on it so well when you said something to the effect of it's having people around you, reaching out to people that have walked the path.
Yeah.
If you can get somebody in your life that's walked through this successfully and healed, that is just going to be a really valuable tool. So yeah.
No, it is.
That's time.
And it helps them too. Don't feel guilty.
Yeah.
It helps them.
It
That's
does.
right. Well, to help you.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Well, that was
Yeah.
one of the things that Mona and I were so amazed about when we began walking alongside you guys.
Yeah.
Was how beneficial it was for us. I mean, we thought we were 2 years plus in.
Well, we weren't done.
Yeah,
but
we weren't done, but that's the point I'm trying to make is when we started meeting with you, things were kind of back to stable and normal and everything was good, and then all of a sudden we realized, because you were bringing up questions and asking things of us that we were thinking, I don't remember ever having you ever say anything like that, or you haven't asked that. So it's beneficial for all. So.
I would almost venture to guess, I'd be interested in your opinion, but we were probably in phase 4 when we met with Mike and
Yeah,
Joe.
I would. Yeah,
You were a little
I would
bit
agree.
further, yeah.
yeah.
I was so excited about meeting you. It just was amazing.
Yeah, all that to say is Mike wasn't all that excited.
No,
about
I was
meeting
not.
us. No, this was
I
kind of.
learned that later.
Yeah.
I learned that later. Yeah.